Hello and welcome. I'm Joanne Law, Director of Mediation Institute and co-founder of Interact Support. I'm on a mission to prevent abuse and violence and to help people to have the skills to interact peacefully. This podcast is conversations with and for dispute resolution professionals. So please follow the podcast, and I really hope you enjoy the conversation. Okay, well, thank you, Melinda. Today I'm talking with Melinda Nutting, who is a child inclusive practitioner and family dispute resolution practitioner with a long background of working with children, and is very, very passionate about the benefits of actually giving children a real, genuine voice in family dispute resolution. So welcome, Melinda.
Yes, so myself and my colleague Tanya Fitzpatrick, we have a service called Step-by-Step Support for Separated Families.
Step-by-Step Support for Separated Families. Excellent. I knew it was something like that, but I wasn't going to say it wrongly. So, and you're based over in Geelong, but one of the things that I know you do is that you can work with families that aren't necessarily physically in where you are.
Yeah, I think it's very important, I suppose, that people don't, I suppose, in this work tend to think that they've got to always go for someone local if that service isn't there, or they choose something different. So we do a lot of Zoom work now, video work, and we've got clients interstate and throughout Victoria as well. And I'm a big fan of co-working and you know, working with other practitioners in whatever way possible. So I think that also is part of why I would love us to be, you know, recognised and available to work with other people in other places. Yeah, other practitioners.
No, yeah. That's it. Look, I'll circle back to that because I'm really interested in it. But just in case anyone's listening that's actually, you know, saying CIP, what the hell's that, Joanne? Do you want to give us in a nutshell what it is, that sort of work that you do?
Yeah.
So how do you fit in
okay, so I think that couple of things. Firstly, some people are familiar with the term as they hear about it in a you know, in the court processes where sometimes as a magistrate might ask the family to go and do a child inclusive consult with someone within the court, and that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Those people would be probably trained in child inclusive practice, just as would be family report writers, family consultants. Yes. However, the application of it's really different because it's feeding into a reportable and legal, you know,
the process. Yeah. So it's really those court ones, and sometimes it's actually worth stating it because sometimes families don't understand, sometimes even mediators don't understand. That is a report. They're evaluating the family and they're going to put to the judge about what they think should happen.
Yeah, I've even recently seen in some legal information people, lawyers kind of saying, look, you might get a child inclusive consult, and I think the thing is from the terminology changes depending on the funding. So just, I guess, especially for lawyers and FDRs, if they're questioning what kind of process it is, what we're talking about is something that is non-reportable, but I can explain more later about the benefits of that rather than being a shortcoming. And it's woven in and it's integrated into the resolution dispute process. Yeah. So the difference is that rather than it being something where people are looking for assistance making decisions, it's really not that. As good FDRs are all about trying to facilitate the parents to come to agreements that are workable and child focused. What the child inclusive offers is, and I'm going to talk it backwards, and I'm going to say it's about the parents being able to reflect on things in a way that might have been really difficult for them to do if they weren't assisted by a practitioner who had been able to feed back to them that their goals for their children are so vital and so important. So what if they were to be able to reflect and consider things differently? The two ways we could do that is either some work with the parents, which could be the way that we've been trained in it, but so too goes across what other programs like New Ways, parenting coaching and many avenues. Or we can do sessions with the children, and then the most important part about that is how it's fed back to the parents and how it is incorporated into the mediation. So some of the big mythology out there about this is that surely that would be bringing kids more into the conflict, and I can address that and explain why not. And secondly, the other thing is that the model's evolved from what people might have heard about, which is where the child consultant worked nearly independently of the mediation process. And what we know now is that, every family is different and every family's need is different, but there's a lot to be said for a model whereby the practitioner is there for at least some of the mediation process, because sometimes a mediator has got enough going on without being able to kind of step away from that and keep going back over some of the things that the child inclusive practitioner would have talked to the parents about. So
yeah, absolutely. So you're both you're on the same page, I guess, by having the child inclusive practitioner coming into the mediation.
Yeah, and I think what has happened in the past is that people have been completely concerned about the cost when you start talking about more than one practitioner and additional appointments.
Yes.
I think another myth to bust is that actually, because we all charge way less than people engaged in the legal system, and far less than family reports, what we're doing is still very much more economical and can be even fixed fee, because what we're trying to do is, and this is the way I look at it, I look at when you see a mediation situation, potentially, or you've already been in one, and you're looking for something that would make a difference there when the parents aren't in a good space or aren't agreeing. And what we're looking for is to bring them back to the very bottom line here, and maybe, just maybe, as a mediator, that might open up the opportunity for us to encourage or support them to consider another option or a little bit of a tweak to an option. And I think what it does for us as mediators, people seem to be a bit nervous that they don't know what to do with controlled inclusive, but I think when you start to use it, then as a mediator you feel like, okay, I could put that forward, because it's off the basis of you having, the feedback to the parents and a sense, it's real. Now, we don't breach kids' confidentiality. So that's another whole big area to say, how do you do the feedback to parents without breaching confidentiality? And I mean, I could go into all of this, but, keep up.
But then, well, you're right, and there's a hell of a lot to unpack. And one of the things that I know you offer is, if there's a practitioner that wants to have a chat to you about child inclusive practice and they've got questions, you're up for a chat, a conversation with them.
Look, I feel that because of the uncertainty and things that people say, like it costs too much or couldn't it work against the children, or one parent wants it but the other doesn't.
So if people have got concerns, or they like the idea of child inclusive practice, but they're just like, people say no or whatever. So maybe you talk a little bit about that.
I guess we've all got our passions, and mine and my work colleague Tanya's is child inclusive, and that's because we have lived and experienced the benefits of it for so long. But we're also aware of the roadblocks or the things that people would say from whatever information they've got, including it costs too much, or one party isn't interested, or won't put the kids in the middle and backfire. Many such examples. So I'm as an advocate and someone who's passionate for it, I really want to try to raise awareness and understanding and create opportunities for people, practitioners, to trial it. So I think the best way there is to build up conversation and build up rapport and build up any way for people to kind of go, I'm interested, but I'd really like to be able to work out how. And so by talking with me, if that will assist them in working out how they might try it out, very, very, very happy to do that. And as you said, we've come up with a couple of ideas to assist practitioners with visual aids and FAQs, and also maybe roadmaps for how the process would work. So they're all things we've talked about we'd like to be able to roll out.
Yeah, and over time we will, because look, I think it's really important, and something that you raised the other day was the rights of the child. We've got this thing that pervades the family law system of, we need to protect the children from the conflict, but that is at the expense of the children's rights to have a say. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, I was really, it's really good now to have some studies from around the world, but including in Australia, the Australian Institute of Family Studies, that where children have been of separation experience, examples have been studied. Sorry, I didn't get that out right. What I meant to say is the children from separated families have been involved in research studies, and they've provided a lot of data about what they're looking for, what of all ages, young and up to teenagers. And once practitioners can see that, then I think that's the leverage to go, well, if the children are asking for that and they're currently not getting it, and that we know really that we have a system which is still very much adult focused, then what we're really looking to do is be, I suppose, courageous enough to tweak it a little bit so that we're clear about what value and benefit and the input of the children has, in a way that is not around them making the decisions, but it goes back to the attachment theory, and for children to function healthily, they do need to have a certain relationship of truth and genuine, attunement from their parents. And when parents are going through separation, they start to see things only through their lens, as in their individual experience of the other parent. And so the benefit of child inclusive is to not pit parents against each other, but identify how the children don't see one parent as wrong or right or what they do in this. But so it really flips it back to being truly child focused. And it doesn't mean more work has to be done by the parents. They can't kind of their own perspective.
Wow, that's a really interesting distinction, though, because the court process and a very basic mediation process is about making a decision around how many nights, where are the hours, what are the changeovers, and those very practical things. But flipping it around so it's actually from the child's point of view, not about those, having the child to decide, but their perspective of, I want to be able to be relaxed with mum and with dad, and I want to see my friends, and I don't want to have, I hate it when they won't even say hello, which is a really common thing that comes out of any time people ask kids what they hate. They hate that no man's land between the cars. I'm sure you've heard that plenty of times from kids.
Yeah, and I think probably it opens up a whole question around how, again, we mediate and what permission we give ourselves. In private, I think we've got, and I'm not saying that other, services don't have this, and they do really try hard. But I think what would be great is if the evolution of mediators is to drill down a bit more into apart from those basics that are.
Well, in some ways, and often I think maybe it's because maybe people have been trained in the public system, and that's the process that they're used to, and they haven't necessarily reflected on that sometimes the process is led by the funding rather than led by what you would do if, and ultimately the budget of a mediation process is so tiny compared to going to court, that really we should be doing everything that would be appropriate. And
you're right. See, we've got more to offer than what we've been brave enough or comfortable enough to offer, and that's because of the setting of the market, because it's either government funded and free or very low cost, or the costs of the lawyers. And we for some reason what we're offering in the middle or even back at the lower end is still seen to sometimes be why wouldn't I just go for the government fund? And I think we've got to do a better job at explaining, not just that I think in the end that it's not we're pitting ourselves against government funded, but what we're able to do is build in things like, how's the parent communication going? Could we work a bit around the conflict could often be related to communication.
Absolutely. Would the parents benefit from having a coach? Would they benefit from having, using an app, to communicate, all of those things? I guess it's a little bit, as you were talking, I was thinking about, it's like going to a bulk billing doctor. You get your little slot of time, and they'll process you through and they'll send you for tests. But
true, yeah, you're right, and
you get used to it. But
and I think also too, I think the way that the Family Law Act 10 years ago introduced the FRCs and introduced the whole idea of mediation, then the legal system, the lawyers went, okay, well, if people are going to mediate, we refer them to an FRC because that's what the government set up. And I just don't think that then the FRCs or the funded organisations, they've really, really got the eye of the Attorney General right down on top of them. So they're very, we've got this idea that we've talked a bit about before, where what happens to the parties, the families that are screened out of those services, and at the moment would maybe make an incorrect assumption that they therefore had a certificate, therefore that means legal proceedings. And so even after 10 years, the way that the system's actually operating is still full of the education and information and the opportunities for families isn't really what it could be and what we could offer. And that's meant, I think, as practitioners, some of us have just kind of, we don't have the tools as a one-person outfit, so how do we do that? And that's where I'm talking about collaboration and background and team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why membership associations like Mediation Institute or any of the others, or unfunded not-for-profits like Interact can be ways for us to collaborate when we do have private practices. So, we don't have to be one thing or the other, because, you don't get into this industry because, you're just out to make a quick buck. That's not, if that was your intention, you probably missed the point. Look, I think that's a really important point. So actually talking about getting into this industry, so how did you, I'm just curious, how did you end up being a child inclusive practitioner?
Well, if I had to, I suppose, think about it, when I studied teaching studies, I took a bit of a left turn and I studied Steiner education, which some people may or may not know about, but it's really interesting because it does look at education from the child's developmental perspective, and it looks at the psychological and well-being of a child, and therefore it proposes a slightly different model for education.
Okay, so sorry, can I just stop you? So you mean it doesn't make an assumption that the age will determine their maturity and capability?
Very much so.
Wow, that's right. Imagine that.
And so it really did strike a chord with me that when we when we're looking at the development of kids and we're looking at healthy or interruptions to healthy development, and we overlay that with a parental or an adult perspective, which says, oh, they're lacking something, we need to, give them something. But then that doesn't work unless we've got this attunement and this feedback to the child about where they're at right now and what it is that they're needing to feel good enough about themselves and valid enough to go out of their comfort zone and take that next developmental challenge. So when you've got a situation like separation, we're talking about that. We're talking about pressure on parents that then can dictate a bit too much to the kids, so that then the kids aren't getting their needs met. Whereas if we could just step back and go, what are the children needing? So it's kind of ironic that what happened was I did some counselling studies, and then I got offered a job doing post-separation parenting groups, and then I fell into this area. But I think I found my passion because it was both based on that philosophy around children's development, and also my own experience of an amicable separation, but in my childhood, disruptive parental separation. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it must be karma or something it up here. Yeah.
Oh no, that's excellent, and well, that's often our own personal insights. Often, really help us to think about, this could be done better, or hey, how come we managed it and these other people can't? So yeah,
I think in terms of both Tanya's and my counselling backgrounds, how that helps enormously is, and I'm sure you're process too, is when you first meet a client and they're pouring out, and that's important. But in terms of then where you're going to go with them, sometimes we've got to step back and not kind of make assessments on screening out, for example, until we've got a sense of, it was the first thing that they needed to get that out there, but then what's there beneath that for them about going forward. And so I think and building that rapport with the clients, to do a little bit of testing or questioning around where they're sitting with things, because then we can start to see if their future focused goals, you could maybe work with that, kind of bring them away from where they're at. And so all of that's about wanting to help people move on, isn't it? And I suppose so then you've got to have some strategies around that, and that's what Interacts is great for as well, because it's all these basket full of strategies that can be very much important to get through this process, and no particular one process or timeline.
No, absolutely. So it's not cookie cutter, because we've all got different levels of resilience right now. We've got different supports we've got different histories that we bring into it, and so we need it to be individualized, and that's what I like of having and as a FDR, I'm working with both parents and I'm getting their perspectives. But it's really difficult without knowing, when they're really polarised, when they're very different in what they think the kids want and what they think is appropriate for the kids. And it is very challenging, because, it's not, we can't decide. And when they haven't got the information for them to understand.
One thing you asked me, sorry.
No, go on. Yeah.
One thing you asked me the other day was, at what point do you make them aware of child inclusive as an option? And it became aware that for some people it was after a mediation scenario, but that then you might propose it. But then is that as effective if people are already a bit polarised? So one thing I think that's got merit is to consider that we explain it much earlier, right back at the intake phase, but not really as a kind of like, and if you would like to think about this, or and that'll be up to you. I think where we've got some work to do is the convincing, compelling reasons why you would consider this, and then even if they don't agree at that point you've planted the seed.
Yeah.
And I was saying to you that I've had a family at the moment where we've been planting the seed for the last 3 months, and it's after the second mediation that it was like at ease, like just so straightforward for them, like, oh yeah, now
time to do that now.
Yeah. But it was because we'd planted the seed, and I'd kept referring to it, not in a hard sell way, but like, well, you see, if you're really saying that and the other parent's saying this is how we would be able to factor in a consideration of what the child, and not that the child's making the decision.
No.
The child's going to be able to assist the parents in understanding that maybe both of them are right on one level, but maybe them are slightly wrong on the other level. Both of them are slightly
absolutely, yeah. And I had a chat with, or did one of these sessions with Yvonne Flanders, who she's up in the Gold Coast. She's also a child inclusive practitioner, and and it's really around the child's experience of the world, and it's not about who's wrong or who's right. It's just really getting, as you said earlier, getting into the child's perspective, which is it's always going to be different to the parents because they're a kid.
and then the thing is that I say to parents, when your child says something or behaves in a certain way, the lower part of the brain has to make some assessment of that, and you make it from the basis of your experience of the other parent. However, that's not the same as whether as what the child is actually trying to let you know. The child isn't letting you know that something's wrong. The child might be actually looking to you for reassurance that it's okay if it's very different at one house and the other.
Yeah.
But their language and the way they've pitched it might not be.
No, absolutely. And if it wasn't such an emotionally charged thing for you, it would be, if it was about your parents' place when they go there, it's probably not going to be as emotionally pitched as
the grandparents.
Yeah. If
the other thing,
the in-law grandparents, though, that could be a different matter altogether.
The other thing too is a big part of this is how you do work with the parents. I think it's really important to say that is about not going in the same way some people interpret a family report as having kind of assessed things that are wrong and need to be changed. So we're very, very careful to have a sense of each parent's different parenting style and attunement capacity and what other pressures and things they might be under. And there's a rule that you never give a parent more than what you believe they would find, and you can see that they would find useful and productive to hear and work with.
Actually, that's something really interesting, because I'm aware of that, but it's a very subjective thing. So one that whether it's proposed or whether you perceive, but the feedback to parents, only what they're able to accept. How do you manage that?
Well,
how do you mind read that?
You don't make it too soft, because you want to. You also want them to feel that what they're holding on to strongly is, I love my child and I want the best for them, and I want something better than what we've got now. So you're always sitting in that place of feeding back to them what they've said or what they would purport are their goals, and then you would ask open-ended questions like, so if this is happening like this now, but we know that that's not working, and that the child's kind of presenting with more anger than you think's healthy, and you're perceiving that that's because of the problem of the other parent. What could be a bit different? What would you consider could be something that you two could do differently? So we'll often talk about the you two as parents,
you two,
and so you explore things, but you'll get to see what the response to that is, and some parents will go, it'll never change, or da-da-da-da. So it is very much.
Okay, so you're kind of calibrating on their responses to questions that are asking them to consider other perspectives, and if they're really stuck,
then you feed back in the child stuff. So you're going, I get what you're saying because you've had this evidence, but remember what it was like when we mentioned that for the child about the other parents. So then you do that thing where you kind of get to see if they got any capacity to tune into their child really, needing both parents to be, psychologically sound.
Yeah.
The other thing, clear, we do we'll do a bit of a preliminary attunement check anyway in the setup prior to seeing the child.
Yeah.
And you do talk to the parents
you talk
early
to
on.
Each parent separately first before you'd be bringing a child in. So we had a little bit of an interruption there, but you're back. Welcome back. One of the things I was really interested in is working with kids remotely, because there are more people training as child inclusive practitioners, but there certainly aren't enough of you around. Particularly quite a few of our members are in regional areas where there may not be someone. So can you tell me a little bit more about how that works, and are there any kind of constraints or differences, or it's too complicated and people need to just talk to you?
No. Look, I'll be honest, when we are doing video work at the moment, it's mainly with the parents. But what we are fortunate enough, and so would other child inclusive practitioners, they'd be the same, you have in your, memory bank all the children you've dealt with.
Yeah.
So sometimes what you can be doing with parents there is asking them to run through scenarios individually that they're concerned about, or that are problematic for the mediation, and then without having seen their child, you can still apply a lot of the child inclusive.
Okay, so you can do more of a child informed process. Yeah, where you're inputting information into.
That's the
yeah. But that would also be quite valuable, because as the mediator, it can be difficult to get that information in without perceptions of bias.
That's it. That's right. Right. And I think that's, why you still need to talk to each person individually, and then that feedback sometimes that session might sometimes be done individually as well. But you're right, it takes away the bias because it's recognised that that's the child inclusive practitioner's role. That's right. Yeah. As far as seeing children, I have to say, I would love to be able to work more on how that could work better, because right now it would be, I would say, okay with older children who understood and felt a bit comfortable. So it's certainly not impossible, and in the way the world's going, but I'm not at the forefront of kind of like having the best technology and the best setup, and then what's happening at the other end, so that you make sure that it's, a comfortable and private location for that child and all those things. So there's a bit of work to be done there.
Yeah, so in some ways it might be something that we could reach out with child counsellors and things like that, because that could work really well while they're at a counselling session to zoom in.
Yeah. That is, I think you're absolutely right, and to have prefaced it with the counsellor and, of course, with consent and confidentiality.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to, but that way,
I agree.
You've got the support there, but it's not mum or dad in the background, watching, as mum and dads are very keen on doing.
That's right. And I mean, because one of the things, if people bring the children is we're mindful that when they're leaving and we say goodbye, and we've already said to the parents, so don't, prior to that, don't kind of think that you've got to explain too much to them about what this is about, and then leaving and go, I told, Sally that it was private and confidential time today, so she might not want to kind of talk about it, and that's okay with you, isn't it, Dad? And isn't it, so you just say that in front of the child so that the child knows Dad's heard it and Mum's heard it too. So with the counsellor, long range or remotely, that would be great for the counsellor to be able to follow through with a bit of that kind of just reminding the parents,
Yeah. So yeah, look, I even after this time, it's still very much an emergent area. The other thing we work with is family group conferencing, which is, it's a model that's come out of New Zealand. It's a different thing to what we're talking about here, but it's, once again, another process where the children are they're actually part of the family plan. So it's not like FDR where we're still doing the planning with the child excluded. When I get some time, I'd love to explore with the right families, including the child in that.
Amazing.
Yeah, because it's these are, and healthy families, when they do have a major family decision, they will all sit down around the table and involve the kids in the consequences, and these are what we're thinking about, and
Yeah, it's just sad that the way the model's set up at the moment is people are too focused on what they might be losing to see that what you could create differently. But I said to you the other day, when you talk to parents about the idea of bird mixing, and you explain that in a separation scenario where the parents live outside the family home and then the children stay in the family home, and the parents are the ones that are more disrupted and out of their comfort zone, and people go, well, that's crazy. But no, the point is that that's what parenting's really supposed to be about, and that shared parental responsibility is about responsibility to do the hard work. And I think the legal system doesn't help, because it's about people start to perceive what their rights are, when actually, as we said earlier, the children are the ones that have the rights. We just have the responsibility as parents, and we should be really looking to see what it is that we could do, even if it's hard for us.
Oh, look, it's an excellent point. I go on Quora sometimes and get tempted into answering. I don't know if you think that, but there was one the other day I couldn't resist, because they said, who owns the child, the father or the mother? And I was thinking,
I didn't see that one.
I hope you were playing devil's advocate, but if you were not, can I point you to the International Declaration of the Rights of the Child? These are a human person. They're smaller, but they're not owned by.
And that's why I say shared parental responsibility is how each of you are going to take responsibility to share.
Yes,
part
absolutely.
Of parenting for a child.
And if I can make a plea to all FDRs that are listening, please reframe clients when they're talking about custody and visitation and access. They're not our language. They're not our system. Yeah. They've been on the internet and all of that, or from the old. Reframe them, spending time with, living with.
I don't even really try to use parenting time much, but I think earlier you said we talk about caring.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I will sometimes say to parents things like, who's on duty? Now, what I mean by that is, if you're on duty, it doesn't mean you're the boss, does it?
No, it's playground duty.
The idea that you just want to be on duty this weekend.
Yeah.
You need to make all encompassing decisions about everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's a great metaphor. And, when you're on duty, you're the point. But, if something really major came up, then you're going to call the other one. So let's say that, there's an injury and they've got to go to hospital. Just the fact that you're on duty doesn't mean you're not going to let the other parent know, But, if you're on duty and there's a little bit of a scrape, you get to put the Dettol and the Band-Aid on and tell them about it when it's, time to swap over who's on duty.
That's right. It's like lifeguard duty, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And do no harm, do no harm.
Absolutely. So, look, I'm just really mindful of time, and thank you so much. It is a really, really important area of work that I think is going to just continue to develop as this system matures, and we get away from this black and white thinking that there's either funded government-funded FDR or court. There's a whole range of ways we can help families to restructure in the middle. It's our job as practitioners to let people know about.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone wants hope and everyone wants possibility, and I think that's what we can offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you once again. So I really appreciate it. And if anyone has questions or whatever, I'll make sure that we link through to your website, and they'll be able to contact you as well, and follow up the conversation. But if you are a Mediation Institute member or connected in one of our Facebook groups, we will be continuing the discussion about how we can improve the referral and I suppose connection between standard FDR and child inclusives to make it a more holistic model, I suppose.
We're going on a learning journey together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, let's create the future, because that's the only way it ever happens. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Joanne, for all your interest and support and advocacy.
You're welcome.